Dashing through the snow in a one-horse open sleigh. O'er the fields we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtails ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to ride and sing a sleighing song tonight. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Now the ground is white, go it while you're young. Take the girls tonight and sing this sleighing song. Just get a bobtail nag, 240 for his speed, and hitch him to an open sleigh, and you'll take the lead. Oh, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey!
Merry Christmas! Let me hear it! Merry Christmas! Good grief. Like Mama used to say, basta. I want you to check this get-up now. Isn't that incredible? I've been told that this color doesn't look good on television, so I'm going to take it off, but I want to take it off anyway because you know I can't talk like a passionate Italian with all this material around me and everything. Yeah. But I want you to hold the image. Will you hold this image? And I'll take this off then, and we'll start going. Just a second. Isn't it nice, though? Isn't it pretty? Here you go. I've always been a frustrated Santa Claus. And you know, it's amazing because I really firmly believe that everybody should have the opportunity to be Santa Claus. And you know, now there are female Santa Clauses at long last, and there are male Santa Clauses, and so everybody can experience this wonderful thing of being a Santa Claus. And you wouldn't believe it, but at one time I used to teach second grade. This was prehistoric times, I'm not giving you, and I used to teach second grade. It was one of the most magical times of my life. Children and Christmas and joy and wonder and magic, which we'll be talking about. But it was a wonderful time, and I remember this particular Christmas. It was the day before the holidays, and you remember that day, which you were just waiting to get out so you can get out of school. And the principal called me in and she said, Leo, we're in deep trouble. Our custodian, who always plays Santa Claus traditionally, who was a big, jolly, wonderful man, is sick, and you're going to have to be Santa Claus. You know, and you had to see me at that time. You know, I weighed about 96 pounds, and I was about so big, and I looked really haggard. You know, my eyes were sunken, and not that I've changed much, but nevertheless, I was a lot skinnier then. And I said, I can't play Santa Claus. The kids will die laughing. She said, Leo, it's either you or no Santa Claus. So we got in the office, and they got me in this marvelous costume, and they put pillows in, you know, and they made me up with rosy cheeks. Oh, it was fantastic. I was scared to death. Really, scared to play Santa Claus. Anyway, it was marvelous. So I get this old bag on, you know, and here are these pillows and this black leather belt around them. You have to visualize it. This old hat on, big rosy cheeks. And so we go into the kindergarten first. And we open the door. Look who's here, you know, it's Santa. And I walk in and I barely get a hole out. The kids go crazy. You know, the teacher wants them all there with their hands folded to greet Santa Claus. They all go mad, you know, Santa! And they come running up, they start tugging at my pants are falling down. My beard's, you know, this way, and I'm saying, ho, ho, have you been good kids, you know? But the thing that was so incredible was the magic and the feel and the vibratory energy that went on between these kids and me. Anyway, we gave all the candy canes out, and I really felt high. I can't begin to describe. 20 feet off the ground, and I went back to the principal's office, and they took all the pillows out, and I took the coat off and everything else, and I took the makeup off, and then I went to the parking lot, and I was feeling so wonderful, like this was going to be the greatest Christmas. And a little kid came by that I knew from the third grade, and I said, hi. I said, how did you like Santa Claus? And he said, "Oh, you were great." And you know, I wasn't disappointed, because all at once I recognized that children know instinctively that Santa Claus is a symbol for something magical and wonderful. They don't care what you look like. Santa Claus can have glasses. Santa Claus could have no hair. Santa Claus could have anything. Santa Claus is something special, and that's the spirit that we want to build in ourselves. It's the spirit that counts. But this little kid walking off in the parking lot and saying, "Merry Christmas, Santa Claus," was just a beautiful feeling for me. And yet, I learned by reading about our Christmas times here in the United States that this is one of the leading times for depressions. People go around at Christmas time miserable and depressed, and the suicide rate rises in this gorgeous holiday. I remember in November I saw a wonderful woman, and she was shopping. She was a good woman. She was shopping, and I was shopping, and she was really sitting there going crazy. And I said, sort of meekly, "Merry Christmas." She said, "Merry Christmas? What's merry about Christmas?" I said, "Well, this is such a nice... Here we're in this store with all the trees around us, and all the jingle bells is playing, and she's furious. And she says, "I've got to send out these damn cards. I've got to buy presents, and they're never good enough. I've got to wait in lines at the post office." Well, she was furious. And then she said the topper, she says, "And then those family fiascos when you're all together with those miserable people." Don't you love it? She said, and then she added the topper, "I think Christmas should be done away with." And I said, "You want to do away with Christ's birthday?" That was kind of an interesting thing. I suggested that maybe she was missing the point. And I said, this is really a time for love and for peace and for joy and for tenderness and for the expression of those things. And she says, "It's easy for you to say." And I thought, well, it isn't Christ that tells us to go to the mall. But when you think about it, it's pretty awesome that this birthday has been going on for almost 2,000 years, and it's survived people like that. But it is kind of a wonderful concept to think that Christ was born in a manger in Bethlehem and came to bring us a message of joy and peace and goodwill toward all people. Too bad we forget what the message is. We start groaning about Christmas cards, making Christmas lists. And if she doesn't send you a Christmas card, off the list she goes. But when you think about it, Christ was the ultimate model. And whether you see Christ as God or man, think about it. What a model. For all of us, what a challenge. He loved everyone. He forgave his enemies, even those who killed him. He nurtured. He was always nurturing. He was a healer. He believed in people. He was a visionary. And there isn't one educator in the world that wouldn't say the greatest teacher that ever lived. What a model for us, and what a challenge for us. But we have a tendency to forget what all this means. It seems to me that Christmas is always tied into some very significant time in my life. I had at Christmas time, I went to the hospital for a checkup, and I had a massive coronary. And, being Leo, these magical things happen. I had it in a hospital. If you're going to have it in a hospital. So there I'm lying there with all these things in there, and it's Christmas, and of course everybody means well, and the carolers are in the hall. And they're singing, Silent Night. And tears are streaming down my cheeks. What am I doing here, you know? And then all the nurses come in and have these enormous corsages. Everybody's eager to get home with the family, and there you're lying, you know. Well, I decided this was no place for me, and I was going to get out of there really fast. And of course, I was one of the lucky ones because I have this monstrous family. You know, there are so many Buscaglias, and they all came to see me. Sign, no visitors. Everybody's coming, and they're bringing me the most incredible thing, fried zucchini. You know, Italian cream puffs. All those wonderful things you should have when you have a heart attack. I have flowers. It looks like a funeral parlor, you know, coming out of everywhere. Everybody's talking. And, you know, Italians, they can't whisper. Forget it. If you're going to say it, you're going to say it. It's going to be heard 8 rooms down, you know. And so what are you doing here? Incredible. So there I am in this hospital, you know, and as soon as they start removing all these things, I decide I'm getting up and I'm getting out of here, you know, really fast. I've got to get moving. You've got to get to a certain level. So I had this little robe on that they give you in this little skirt, you know, this cute little skirt that you have on. And I'm walking around the halls, and I have this walker, and I'm going along. And I look in the rooms, and I see that there are people worse off than I. They've got nobody there. They've got no flowers. They have no lasagna. How can you get well without lasagna? And so I figure, Leo, this is your chance to really get in there and help these people. And I walk in there, you know, I bring my flowers, and I'd say, hey, look here, this is for you. You know, do I know you? Are you a relative? No, I'm Santa Claus. Well, sit down. You know, it was wonderful sharing these. Oh, I can't eat fried zucchini. Forget it. Mama had fried zucchini till she was 82. Have a fried zucchini. Oh, it was an incredible thing. We started to make each other well. We started to nurture each other. And by the time I was there for 8 days, and we formed what we called, and I think it's a wonderful, significant title, the Open Heart Club. Isn't it great? And we would all walk down the hall together, you know, go see new visitors. They'd wheel someone in, and we'd all go there and say, how you doing? Look at us, we got well. It ended up being a madhouse. The nurses were so happy to see me go. But you know, how can you hate a holiday that gives you wreaths and mistletoe, that gives you fir trees in your living room? If I ever asked you, you know, I love putting leaves in my living room, people think I'm crazy. It's my living room. I like leaves. I'm not asking you to clean them up. But here you go, and at Christmas time you bring a fir tree in your living room. Isn't that incredible? Lights, Christmas lights and candles, decorations, fruitcakes and gingerbread men, family and friends, sugar canes. It's a wonderful, incredible time. How can you hate it? Well, you know, maybe what we really need to do is remember what it was like to be a kid. And you know, I don't care how old you are, you still have that kid back here somewhere. Go find him and her and remember what it was like. Remember what it was like when you still believed everything. Remember? Now you question everything and you're miserable. You don't accept. Kids accept everything. We fight everything. We want reality. Even if it means you go to a madhouse. I want reality. Where's fantasy? Fantasy nurtures you. Get back to that. When joy was a natural state. Remember that? And now if you feel joy, you feel guilty. Like, God, I'm joyful. You know, what's going to happen? It's true, we're afraid to be happy. You won't believe this, but I had somebody just about 2 to 3 days ago say to me, you know, I find it very difficult to be with you. You are always happy. So what does he want me to do? Be miserable? To make him happy? Christmas is a time to accumulate miraculous memories. You know what I've just become wise enough to realize? And that is that all that life is the accumulation of memories. Think about it. The thing that makes you what you are here tonight are your memories. You as a child, you as an adolescent, you as just yesterday. Without your memories, you would not be. I say accumulate beautiful memories because you're going to need them. James Barrie, the wonderful writer, said, God gave us memories so that we can have roses in December. Gather your roses. And don't allow little things to bother you. They don't really matter. Rise above them. You know, I read recently about a woman who had a manger scene in front of her home every year. She really worked hard. There were life-size Marys and life-size Josephs and the crib and the wise man and everything else. And she had lights and Christmas carols. And it took her and her family days to prepare it. And one morning she came out on her porch and some vandals had gone and smashed them all to pieces. Well, you know, that would be enough to make you a Scrooge. But she said, they're not going to get the best of me. I'm going to do it over again. And if they smash them down, I'll do it again. You know, that's really what it's all about. Life is never smooth. You get smashed every now and then. So you rise up and you say, I'm going to do it again. And again and again and again and again. All the great, wonderful lovers of the world are full of scars. Want to see? By the way, I really should show you that I felt Christmas from the head down. Look. You didn't see. Anyway, it's memories that link us to immortality. As long as somebody remembers, you never die. You know, Mom and Papa have been dead for years, but I swear to you I can still smell her minestrone. I can hear her laugh. I can see Papa's garden with the big zucchini, the eggplant. I can see him cutting down the flowers and bringing them into Mama. Those are things that don't die. They're not dead. I pass them on to you. You pass them on to somebody else. That's what it means to be immortal. And that's the only aspect about us that is immortal. And I have great memories of Christmas. You know, one of the happiest was the first year I started teaching. And I was teaching, as I said, I was teaching a second grade. And it was incredible. And because I was the new teacher in the school, I was the one given the Christmas pageant. Remember the Christmas pageant? Well, the supervisor, oh, I wish you could have seen my supervisor. Bless her little heart. She was always smiling. But boy, you better not cross her. You know that kind of... And she said, now listen, Leo, the best thing to do is to get a script, have the kids memorize it, and then do it like we've always done it. I said, you know, I have such wonderful kids in my class. I'd like to try something spontaneous. She said, uh-huh. So you know what I did? I had this wonderful class. Every day for weeks before, I would read them the Christmas story, which is so beautiful. And I'd just read it to them. And then we'd get up and act it out. And then we elected who was going to play what. Well, there was no doubt in anybody's mind who was going to play Mary. We had a little Mexican girl who was so beautiful that she looked like she just came out of heaven. She had great big brown eyes and dark hair and this sort of olive skin, and she was beautiful. Everyone selected her to be Mary. Well, Well, I was sure this was going to happen. We had one kid in the class, and there's always one, who was hyperactive. He was never in his seat. He was the athlete. Boy, he could toss a ball anywhere. He'd help all the kids. And his name was Matthew. I'll never forget that, Matthew. And there's always a Matthew dancing around. He never could sit at his desk. He was on it, under it, aside, beside it. If the principal ever came in, I'd have to go and hug Matthew while the principal was there. Because Matthew was under my arms. Well, Big Matt, and he was always a head above everybody else. I called him, his nickname was Big Matthew. And I loved Big Matthew. I really cared about him, but he couldn't read, he couldn't write, but he could play. Boy, could he play. And he was just a really cute kid. And wouldn't you know, the class loved him, and they selected him to be Joseph. I thought, catastrophe! Hyperactive Joseph. Well, finally comes the big moment. And the way they decided to do it, and I said it was spontaneous, is that Mary and Joseph were sitting on a log. And Mary fell asleep on Joseph's shoulder. And here's Big Matthew, you've got to visualize it. And the angel of the Lord comes in, and she's carrying the child, Jesus. And she puts it down at Mary's feet. They'd never done it this way before. I was standing back of the curtain there, holding my breath. Big Matthew wakes up, yawns, flexing his muscles. He looks down like this, and he reaches over and he shakes Mary, says, "Mary, Mary, wake up and see what you had during the night." Half the audience fainted. It wasn't bad enough. There was this hush. You heard everybody go, "Ugh." And one father, bless his heart, couldn't control himself. And he was slapping his knees and saying, "Honey, did you hear that? Look what you had during the night. Oh, this is the best pageant I ever saw." Well, finally the curtain went down, and the kids took a curtain call, and the audience went mad. And then the principal came to me, and she said, "I'd like to see you." Oh, I remember this so well. First year teaching. "I'd like to see you in my office when this is all over." So I walked into the principal's office, and contrary to my belief, she was grinning from ear to ear. She said, "Leo, that was the most spontaneous and beautiful Christmas pageant we've ever had at this school. You're going to be a great teacher one day." But that's not the end. The end is the best part of all. I go back to my thing to get my things ready for Christmas, and I walk into my classroom, and here's Big Matthew. Remember, he couldn't read. And he said, "Mr. B," they could never pronounce Buscaglia, so. He said, "Mr. B, I decided I'm not going to be a basketball player when I grow up." I said, "No, Matthew? What are you going to be?" He said, "I'm going to be an actor." I said, "Matthew, if you're going to be an actor, you've got to read." He said, "Okay." I'd like to tell you it was that simple. But it wouldn't surprise me if Matthew was somewhere acting right now. He was great. But I'd like to take you on a memory trip so that we can feel these things. Take a trip back with me. Can you remember the first gift as a child that you gave to your mama and your papa? At least go back as far as you can. I can remember mine. At that time, we had 5 and 10 cent stores. That actually meant 5 and 10 cent stores. You go in a 5 and dime now, and the cheapest thing is $1.80. But at that time, you could really buy. I bought my mother a little bottle of something called Aloha perfume. And my dad an enormous bottle for $0.10 of cologne. That was the smelliest Christmas. But it was so much fun. Remember that time? And those wondrous church services. when you really thought you must have been in heaven. The incense, the music. And what did you know as a kid? It just felt so good and so right. You weren't sophisticated. You didn't analyze everything. And remember the gifts you always wanted and you got, and the gifts you always wanted and you didn't get? You bet. And the times that Santa came and the times that Santa didn't come. A Christmas I certainly will never forget. You know, those of you who know about Mama, Mama was something from another planet. If nothing else, she was always consistent. You could count on Mama being consistent about everything. When she said no, she meant no. It didn't matter to you whether you stood on your head, whether you whined, whether you screamed, but at least we knew where we stood with Mama. Well, this particular year, I couldn't have been over 6. I was a brat. I was horrible. And you know, in Italy, we don't have Santa Claus, we have Babbo Natale. Babbo Natale is just an old man that symbolizes Santa Claus. But also, we have the Christmas angel. And Mama was a very religious woman, so we always had the Christmas angel. And it was always a Christmas angel who brought gifts. We weren't very happy with the Christmas angel, because Santa Claus always brought wonderful things to our neighbors. The Christmas angel always brought us chestnuts. Now, what do you do with a chestnut? Where's the bicycle? Where are the roller skates? Chestnuts and oranges. And we put out our stockings and our shoes. We had a big pot stove, you know, where we put wood in it, and we'd all put my brother and sister would all put the stuff out, and then we'd wait for the Christmas angel. Well, my mother kept saying, if you keep behaving the way you are, the Christmas angel is never going to come. Well, you know, even at that age, I thought, come on now. What does the Christmas angel know about me? With all the people in the world, the Christmas angel's watching me? I'm going to behave just the way I want to behave, and I'll get my things too, you know. So I remember this particularly. We used to wait to open our things on Christmas morning, just before we went to church. And so we'd wake up very early, and we'd hear Mama downstairs making breakfast and putting the wood in the stove. And we came rushing down, you know, here with this whole family, and there are all the stockings laden with everything else. And there's my stocking with a stick in it. I can feel it still right down here. And there's my mother saying, oh my goodness, Felice got a stick. Oh, Felice, I'm so sorry. But you see, the Christmas angel sees everything. Well, you know how kids are. I didn't want any chestnuts anyway. Keep your old chestnuts. But of course, the tears are flowing. My brothers and sisters are crying. Leo didn't get anything. You know, Mama gets me on her lap, and she says, you see, Felice, there's a lot to learn from the Christmas angel. You get in this world what you deserve in the long run. And sometimes it doesn't seem so, but you believe it. I've lived a lot of years, and I found that eventually you get just what you deserved. Just wait. The only reason we have unhappy Christmases is because we put such expectations on it. And even if Christmas doesn't bring you everything you hoped it would bring, use even the despair that it brings you to learn, and so it doesn't happen to other people. If you were lonely one Christmas and you knew what it meant to be lonely, use this Christmas to go out and get lonely people together so it doesn't happen to them. That's what it's all about. You know what I like to do at the end of every year? I like to take the calendar down, my little calendar, my appointment calendar, and look over the year. Otherwise, it will slip through our fingers. I like to look at the times on the calendar when I thought I would die and I didn't. I like to look at the celebrations, the weddings, the births, the happy days, yes, and the illnesses. I like to look at all the times that I had unnecessary worry about things that never happened. And all at once it occurs to me that over the passing of time in the long haul, life is a pretty great thing. I'm glad it's mine. I'm glad I'm alive. And then, you know, Christmas is a wonderful time because it's a time for giving. And boy, we make that wonderful, simple act of giving a nightmare. Every Christmas it becomes a nightmare. It shouldn't be a problem. You want the best gift? Give yourself. That's the best gift. You know, Papa always told us that when we got something of value, immediately, don't wait, share it. That means sharing the good. And you never know how much that's going to affect people along the line. But we're so neurotic and anxious about giving that we've made Christmas a yearly industry. It begins in December, then it begins in October, then it begins, pretty soon it's going to start about February. And you notice that on television, for the little kids, they're told months and months in advance what they can't live without for Christmas. And then poor parents try to find it. And you know, one of the dynamics that I see and I really feel so sad about is like divorced parents. One is trying to outdo the other, buying their kids a bigger and better gift. Grandparents that spend enormous amounts of money because they don't want to be outdone by the other grandparents. Well, let me tell you news if you don't know it. Even kids don't want to be bought. And the basis of the psychology of giving is very simple. Does the gift show love? If the gift shows love, then there is no small gift. That's the wonder of it. And if you give out of a sense of duty, you know, I've got to get her a gift. Keep it! But you know, your gift, whatever it is, let it have a special meaning. For goodness sakes, don't buy her a vacuum cleaner. Don't get him a lawnmower. Even if she tells you that's desperately what she needs. Buy a nice Christmas gift for the house. We bought a vacuum cleaner for the house, but not for her. If he buys you a vacuum cleaner, wrap it up and give it to him for his birthday. And the gift should show that somebody knows you. It should be something wonderful, intimate, you know, some little secret that you have. That makes all the wonder. My goodness, he knows me. He knows my weakness. You know, even if it's a handful of candy you're not supposed to have under your pillow. The Christmas angel creeped in, the rat. You know, I remember one of the most amazing things, many of you know that many, many years ago, I sold everything and I took off and went to live in Asia. And once I found myself in Bali, and this was before the big hotels and before all the tourist business. There was nothing except beautiful creatures and wonderful scenery and clean, pure water and etc. I was in a tiny little village called Ubud, about which I've written. Some of you may have read the book. But anyway, I was there, and I found that it was Christmas Eve. And it was the first time in my life I had ever been in a non-Christian country on Christmas Eve. And I remember that I was staying with a family, and I was trying to tell these people what Christmas was. And they said, "What's Christmas?" And so I got to tell the story of Christmas. And you know, when you just tell the simple story of Christmas to someone that's never heard it, it's incredible. And you know, they could understand. They loved everything about it. They thought it was the most beautiful, the most wonderful story, except that none of them could understand why nobody would let Mary in at the inn. You know, in Indonesia, The doors are always open. Any stranger that comes, you crawl in, and there's always, and they were saying, well, there's always room on the floor. And, I was using all kinds of excuses. Well, they didn't know that she was carrying the child. What difference does that make? And they kept talking, and they'd go along their business, and then one of them would turn to me and say, but I don't understand why they didn't let her in. But anyway, they were so generous. And, I told them about Santa Claus. I told them about a Christmas tree. They'd never heard of a Christmas tree. I told them about pine trees and how they looked. And so I went to dinner, and then when I came out, it was night, and the place was just full of stars. There were no lights. And they had taken a palm tree, and they had cut it down. And they had put those little clay candles all around it. And they said, Merry Christmas. If you don't think I made a fool of myself. I just sat there and cried. They thought they'd hurt my feelings. And then they started giving me things because I said that was the time for exchanging gifts. And they started giving me batiks and carvings. And I had nothing. I was traveling, with a sack on my back. That was all. But I did have things they didn't have, like soiled underwear. That had been washed 1,000 times, and I gave it, and they loved it. They took off these wonderful batiks and put on the underwear. We've all been involved and caught ourselves involved in the frantic search for the perfect gift. Just watch in the next few days as you're shopping, these frantic people grabbing and reaching for things as if they're going to disappear forever. And children, again, are bombarded by what they must have. I remember my niece said to me, oh, Leo, you're an educator, and what does a 4-year-old require? Air. But she went on, she read these books, she went out and bought this expensive gift that was supposed to be for eye-hand coordination and all these really sophisticated things. I'll never forget my little grandies sitting there and seeing this beautiful thing, beautifully wrapped. She unwrapped it, she looked at this marvelous motivational toy and played with the wrapper. $40 down the drain. And the other side of receiving or giving is receiving. We don't know how to receive graciously, and that has to be done with the same kind of love that you give. And how often do we hear, oh, you shouldn't have? What do you mean? Of course you should have. I'm important to you, and it's a wonderful way for you to demonstrate it. Oh, it's too much. Well, if you really cared enough to get it, it isn't too much. It's a nice tribute. And how many times have you heard, I told you not to get me anything? Boy, if you didn't. How about just saying, wow, thank you? It's such a simple way of accepting it, because giving and receiving are the same thing. They both express love. I remember that I had a very severe back problem a few years ago, and I was laid out in bed, and some of you, I understand, 1 out of every 8 of us have back problems, so you can have sympathy with me. I couldn't move. Well, friends were coming in and bringing food and doing housework and doing errands, and it was incredible. Here I am, independent me, And one of them said to me, I don't wish you ill luck, but I'm so glad this happened to you. I said, what are you talking about? You finally gave us a concrete way of saying to you, Leo, we love you. Because you see, a gift is the personification of love. It's a tangible way of saying, I love you, especially a personal gift. So we're making it manifest. And sometimes the gift may not seem to be much to start with, but it has a backlash. I remember when I was teaching love class, we used to go around to all retirement homes in the area. And I still am, gosh, if we don't get busy and do something about retirement homes. These people are not yet dead. We'd go in there and they would wheel in all these elderly people, and we would do this at Christmas, and we'd sing Christmas carols, and I have no voice at all, and neither did my students. But we'd sing and sing. At least we were saying, I care about you, I haven't forgotten you. And I remember one woman was wheeled in, and the nurse said that she hadn't spoken since she got to this retirement home. Hadn't said a word. So here we are singing, deck falls with miles of... And all at once she said, enough of that noise! And I understand she hasn't stopped talking since. So you see, it can be a backlash. You can do good anyway. And then most important of all is don't forget that the major symbol of Christmas is birth. And more wondrous even than that, a rebirth that's eternal. It's a reminder that somewhere at some time, all year long, something is being created. And each moment is a new creation. And there's a new you, still unborn, no matter how old and wise you are, waiting patiently inside of you, a child, a new babe, with unlimited possibilities still to be discovered, to be developed, and to be shared with everybody. That's the wonder. You are not fully born. You are still in the process. Reach in and find out what that magic is. Build it up, nurture it, and then give it away. Because you are one of a kind. There's only one you. And it's one thing to have a potential. It's another thing to work at developing it. And Christmas is the time for birth and new hope. Otto Friedrich said, if everyone subscribed entirely to the rule of common sense, the world would be quite a different place. Christopher Columbus would have said, let's turn around and go home. George Washington would never have survived Valley Forge. And Edison would have said, I give up. No one will ever find that way. If hoping for the impossible is often foolish, it still is preferable to the opposite, which is despair and the numbness which accompanies despair. Dante knew very well what he was saying when he reported that the words over the gate of hell were, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. As long as you have hope, you have life. And we forget the story of Pandora's box. We think it was a terrible thing. Pandora was given a gift by Zeus, the god Zeus, to give to her husband, Epimetheus. And he said, give it to your husband. But her husband had been warned not to ever accept a gift from Zeus. And he said, no, I don't want to take it back. But she was curious to see what was in it. And of course, she opened Pandora's box, where the myth comes from. And out came all of the miseries of the world, greed and vanity and slander and evil. All the terrible things that we have to deal with. But she was horrified, and she slammed the lid down just in time to keep hope in. Isn't that wonderful? So every time you see the misery and the despair, as long as you have hope, there's nothing to be concerned about. And each year, we're reminded that a new possibility lies before us. But time is ticking on. And it doesn't stop for any one of us. And it's not the time that is to be of your concern, but how you use that time. That's the wonder of it all. So we have an opportunity this Christmas time to give of ourselves, to give of our love, to grow, to renew, to be reborn, to be rejuvenated, to celebrate joy. It's all ours. And I told you I don't have a voice, and I don't. But I want to sing you a song. Prepare yourself. jingle bells, jingle all the way. Listen, it's coming from, oh, what fun it is to ride a one-horse open sleigh. Now, let that get hooked in your wonderful brains. And every time during this Christmas season that you get grouchy, that you want to strangle the kids, that you want to drown your mother-in-law, that you want to pop your husband, that your sister-in-law comes in and says, I don't want a turkey, I want a goose. You will give her a goose. And you will not lose your cool because you'll laugh, because you'll think of Buscaglia singing Jingle Bells. And that's for your head. And now this is for your heart. Remember this. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came to them, and the glory of the Lord shone round them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good things, good tidings of great joy, which shall come to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth goodwill toward men. I've had 14 such shows, many of them right here in Sacramento. I have never asked anything of any of my audiences. And tonight is going to be the first. You know how, and it's nothing, I love it, how usually I come down to you and you hug me. This is Christmas. And as a special gift to me, would you hug each other? And now don't exclude me. But you know, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't only hug your husband, your wife, your father, your mother, whomever you're with, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, but hugged at least one stranger? I'll never forget in my line of hugging a woman that came to me, and as she was in my arms, rather elderly woman, she said, You're the first man who has hugged me, Leo, for the last 14 years since my husband died. You might be hugging that very woman tonight. Don't miss the opportunity. And those of you watching this show on television, get off your duff and do the same. Grab your wife, grab your husband, grab your children, grab your parakeet, your dog. It may be later than you think, but the time is now. So let's do it and have the most wonderful Christmas of your life and spread it out for the entire year to come. Thank you very much. Hug, hug, hug. Come on, hold each other. Come on.
Whisper what you bring to me, tell me if you can. When the clock is striking 12, when I'm fast asleep, down the chimney broad and black, with your pack you'll creep. All the stockings you will find hanging in a row. Mine will be the shortest one, you'll be sure to know. Johnny wants a pair of skates, Susie wants a sled, Nellie wants a picture book, yellow, blue, and red. Now I think I'll leave to you what to give the rest. Choose for me, dear Santa Claus, you will know the best. Jolly old St. Nicholas, lean your ear this way. Don't you tell a single soul what I'm going to say. Christmas Eve is coming soon, now you dear old man. Whisper what you'll bring to me, tell me if you can.
Funding for this program has been provided by this and other public television stations.